I'm going to talk about how we produce not just red blood cells, but the other ones. It's called hemopoiesis. And this is what we're going to talk about. We're going to focus on hemopoiesis. Brought to you by Curious Maryland. So, in a previous video I talked about hemoglobin production and recycling. At the end of the recycling we talked about, well, the iron and the breakdown of the heme and the globulin part. How do you reassemble that? Red blood cells lived about 120 days if they're not damaged, and so they're a key ingredient. So quick reminder, we're dealing with platelets, white blood cells, red blood cells. The production of blood cells is called hemopoiesis, and we have this amazing cell that actually divides and can steer into any of these three cells. It goes through a series of changes. So, and that is called the hemocytoblast. Now, if you follow this, I'm going to keep coming back to this. So if you follow this, it first divides into two types of cells. One of them looks like it just steers this way. We'll finish with that and this one. I want to mainly focus on this pathway. So if there's a special protein, a hormone, right here, that's going to ultimately result in a red blood cell. And we did this before. Oops, go there. So let's look at it like this. All right, we want to focus on this. In my previous video on hemoglobin recycling, we talked about how you get from here back. And here's one key ingredient, getting the iron back into the bone marrow where red blood cell production happens. So inside that is a specialized cell called a hemocytoblast. All right, and that hemocytoblast it will be triggered to go to a red blood cell if you have this structure called erythropoietin. It's called EPO in all the videos. So what it does is it takes the myeloid cell and stimulates it to go through mitosis, cell division. And as it goes through it, it speeds up and it matures and becomes a red blood cell. Essentially, it's going to basically help you recover blood loss, but it's also going to infuse and help. You can help cancer patients. Basically, new supply of blood, nutrients, means of oxygenating that area, more oxygen. Better. You're going to basically be able to produce a lot of ATP for chemical work. Now, I wasn't going to talk about this, but let's talk about the steps. All right. So if we go back to the picture, now you might have noticed this said myeloid. So first thing is the hemocytoblast is going to, based on certain factors, all right, that are going to cause it to steer this way or this way. Now it will, and it's going to be levels of iron increase or a need for red blood cells that triggers it this pathway. A need for platelets, it will trigger it this pathway. Need for white blood cells, either still going this pathway for some of the white blood cells here, or going this way. All right, if you're the lymphocytes. And I probably won't have time, but if I do, I'll go over the basic white blood cells. So we really know a lot about red blood cells at this point. So let's see. The myeloid cell is here. If EPO is there, it's going to go through these series of stages. So let's look at the picture and then look at the text. So it's going to, this thromboblast here, the perithromboblast, then it's going to be a erythroblast. And then watch, it gets rid of it. Gets rid of what? The nucleus. It's anucleate. And then once it's the reticulocyte, as soon as it gets into the bloodstream, it's an erythrocyte, which is what we call a red blood cell. So the stages of erythropoiesis. So first, this is kind of busy. If you're one of my students, you should pause this video. So you got the hemocytoblast. It's a multipotent cell. That is a cell, a stem cell, that can differentiate, meaning go through a series of mitotic changes, and each change, basically when it does that, it's going to look like a new cell. All right, I need to turn the lights back on. All right, so that mitotic division, the one cell divides, but the genes turn on to shift it towards being a myeloid cell. Now where does it take place? This is the red bone marrow. So in your long bones. So the myeloid tissue is there, or it's produced and generated there. So this would be step one. Okay. Then so go from a hemocytoblast to a myeloid. So step two is the erythroblast. Now what are they doing? They're going to start synthesizing hemoglobin. All right? And now you're infusing remember you have to get the iron there. So the iron got transported through something called transferrin from the macrophages that were breaking it down earlier. So that's in my other video. So now once you get what you do is you get rid of the nucleus. So the third thing is get rid of the nucleus. See, this is so packed with hemoglobin that it doesn't need a nucleus. It doesn't even have mitochondria, which the importance of that is if it had mitochondria, it would start using up that oxygen. So this, another reason why it only lives to be 120 days. So the reticulocytes, once they enter the bloodstream, they mature and they are erythrocytes, which we are calling red blood cells here. So let's stick with my number scheme. So this would be number 1, right? I guess you can call number 1 this is still kind of number 1. Myeloid, well, I guess I should call that 2. That's number 2. I'm going to call this 3, and I stopped numbering. I should have numbered this 4 here. I'm trying to write with the mouse. So then this is 4. So this is hemopoiesis, in particular erythropoiesis, meaning it produces erythrocytes. All right. So that's red blood cells. I'm going to close up this video by briefly talking about white blood cells and thrombocytes. That's a platelet, so this hopefully won't be that long. So if you follow the pathway now, instead of EPO, erythropoietin, you might have a stimulus that's going to trigger it going down here, forming another stem cell that will turn into platelets. These are thrombocytes for your clotting factors. All right, now there's a whole bunch of stuff here for white blood cells. You're going to go through blast cells, and you're going to form something called a myoblast, or a monoblast, or a lymphoblast. Or that would be over here. And then they go through melanocytes, band cells, and then you get your functional white blood cells. And they're actually in 2 categories, granulocytes and agranulocytes. I'll talk about that later. So these are the basophils, eosinophils, neutrophils, polymorphonucleophils is how I remember it. And then, so that's all from the myeloid. Now, if we go this way, we're going to go straight down and form T cells. So, I have that twice in the PowerPoint. Let's go back to this. Now, before I finish with the white blood cells, I meant to go over here. See, so the erythropoietin is stored in the kidney. It's going to be released. What it does is it causes an increased mitotic rate. So this is just another way. All right, so the stem cell, the hemocytoblast, becomes the erythroblast, then the reticulocytes, and then imagine this being a blood vessel, and these red blood cells are now in the bloodstream. They're going all the way through, and they're improving oxygen content throughout the systemic system. And of course, picking up oxygen. They're dropping it off and then picking it up in the lungs through the pulmonary circuit. So I jumped ahead. So what exactly is erythrocytosis? Well, the hemocytoblasts, these amazing cells, can also go through and form lymphoid cells, and we call that lymphopoiesis instead of erythropoiesis. And they're going to be stored in the bone marrow and some of your lymphatic tissues, hence your lymph nodes, right? So basically, these myeloid cells, or the hemocytoblast, so you got, this is one of them, and then this is the biggie. This produces more of them. So I should have numbered it the other way, but so I just called that 1, and then that's 2. All right, but 2 is a biggie, and they form 2 types of lymphocytes: T lymphocytes and B lymphocytes. I'm not going to write it on here, but B lymphocytes make your antibodies. Platelets. So basically, the blood clotting, the repair system. All right, the myeloid cell, all right, hemocytoblast, myeloid, and then it's going to form another stem cell called a megakaryocyte, karyocyte, and that's going to result in here. So this is this pathway. So really, if you were to talk about the 3 cells, you can't really say 3 cells because basically these 3 categories come from this, but collectively these are your white blood cells, these are your platelets, these are your red blood cells. So the white blood cells are lumped together, but they actually have two potential parent cells or stem cells, but they all got one granddaddy, so to speak, or grandma. That's the granddaddy of them all. This differentiates into all the cells that ultimately become your blood cells. Notice I said blood cells because it could be any of those three categories, or those, there's what, 4 or 5 types of white blood cells. All right, that's pretty much it. Brought to you by Curious Marineland. All right, and pretty much this video will be uploaded. If you're one of my students, I strongly recommend you watch this and look at the PowerPoint that's on Blackboard. So, all right.